Okay, so here we are. First of all, really thank you everyone for joining. I know it's summer, it's very hot, it's not always the best time to have business conversations on a Friday night. So I thank you so much for coming in and really attending. Let me go through a little bit what we'll be doing today. My name is Lara Laghetto. I have organized the Biomedical Visualization and Communication Meet Up together with our co-host, Vika Lebedeva-Baxter, and our speaker for today, Vika Lebedeva-Baxter. A very important surname, by the way. That's of a pharmaceutical company back in the days. So let's do the introductions. First of all, I'm Lara, a founder of Visualmedics, a biomedical visualization studio. I'm a trained medical and scientific illustrator, a multimedia designer. I work with biotechnology, pharma, medtech, and continuing medical education companies, creating audience fit, science-accurate visuals that support the clinical, medical, and commercial goals. Evita is a freelancer in medical communication in MedComms, creating educational and promotional content for diverse audiences. She has a PhD in neuroscience with 4+ years in MedComms, combining scientific depth, clear storytelling, and collaborative workflows to help life science teams drive impact. And Vika is the co-founder of Kincaid. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Kincaid. After 20+ years in the marketing side of life science, she does often do the briefing for the kind of professionals in this community. Her agency specializes in closing the lead nurture gap for life science companies. Before we dive in, just want to give you a little bit of an overview of today's agenda. We'll have a short summary of the previous meetup. We'll start with a round of introductions to get a sense of who is in the room. I have a poll for this. Our guest speaker is going to give us a short overview of the field she's working in and hold her presentation. So we'll try to exchange ideas and share thoughts on questions also in the chat. So let me get started with who is in the room. Exactly as the previous meetup, if we done the communication for this event right, a community of people who made the science understandable are present during this call. Could be possibly biomedical illustrators and scientific visualizers, medical writers and science communication professionals. Could be animators, motion designers in life sciences, or people that work with brand in pharma, biotech, medtech, and educators, patients, advocates, and researchers. So now that we got a sense of who is in the room, we'll go through the summary. Last time we did our first, I believe that was on the 24th of April, we did the first meetup. And the presenter that we had at the time was Evita. And Evita was so kind to give us a presentation about where science, story, and visuals meet. And so I'm just going to give her the voice now to just summarize really quickly what we talked about last time, really just in one go. Evita, do you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you. And hi everyone, to those also who I didn't greet when I entered the call. So last time Lara invited me to speak at the event from the perspective of the medical writer and how can we, the medical writers and the visualization expert, work best together in order to create these transformative, accessible, and actionable materials that we do in MedComms. So I will give a short recap of what we discussed. Definitely, we said that that text and visuals work better together, improving clarity and enabling faster understanding for both expert and non-expert audiences. However, sometimes there is no early alignment between medical writers and visualization experts. And for that reason, sometimes what happens is that projects can drift away from the original scope. So that's why a good collaboration looks like aligning early. So after we have the brief from the client or we need to come together. We need to define clear roles and responsibilities. So who owns the narrative and how we collaborate in order to make this happen. Develop the first narrative together, like giving the information and how the visual should be on its deliverable, and then start executing. And during the process of working together during a project, it's good to have clear and structured checkpoints. So depending on how long is the project, it's nice to get together in order to make sure that that we are still working nicely on the scope of the project and nothing is drifting away. So that was a short recap. Okay. And I give it back to Lara to continue with.
Thank you, Vita. So we brought everyone on the same page, also the people that were not attending the previous meetup, which is really fantastic. So I'm just going to go ahead now and present Vika. She is going to talk about a really interesting subject, which is briefs. And she will talk about briefing from a point of view of a client. And she's often the one that is working with marketing teams and needs to organize a lot of different actions within her strategy. And one of these is obviously brief for the visuals that need to be utilized in different settings, but also mostly on campaigns. Okay, perfect. I leave you, Vika, give you a presentation. If you need anything, I'm here. I'm just going to mute myself.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Lara. And excited to be able to contribute to your community and actually learn from the other side and share how things are from a marketer's perspective. And a few weeks back when Lara and I were chatting, we sort of landed on this idea that the kind of work that you deliver for your clients is actually, more than just a deliverable. It's more than just a sort of decorative thing that you create. It's a strategic asset. And in order for a strategic asset to be perceived as that, the brief plays a really, really important part in it. And so, as Lara said earlier, I've spent more than 20 years as a marketer working with life sciences and medtech and biotech companies. And I have worked with engineering companies as well, always as a marketer, doing a lot of briefing. Now, as an agency, we are briefed as well as we do the briefing. So I kind of have a foot in each world. And one of the things that I know just from years of doing this is that briefing is actually a really underappreciated and often underdeveloped skill. So I wanted to walk you back to several years back when I was working as a global content lead for a large reagents and instruments manufacturer called LGC Biosurge Technologies. And this is what my Monday would look like. So I would have many pieces of content that I would be in the process of creating and commissioning and reviewing. I might have, 5 one-hour meetings in my calendar that day. I would be coordinating a lot of external suppliers and vendors and so on. And I might be working across 3 different integrated campaigns, all have very similar launch dates. And integrated means you're working across many channels. So for our team, which was a really big team, global company, we had at least 7 channels that we had to produce content for. So this is kind of the everyday. And then if we break this down a little bit more into how that looks, because this is relevant to why briefing happens or doesn't happen very successfully, it's also really relevant to, I think, understand the context within which the kinds of clients that you work with operate. So for me, I had a huge range of tools that I had to kind of be working with all at once, right? So we had more than one project management software, Asana, Trello. We would often have HubSpot open, some kind of CRM, also a CMS, content management system, which might be different to your CRM. Salesforce, where you look at deals data and sort of customer conversations data. A SharePoint, a digital asset management library. So this is kind of where all of your different files live. We would use a Google Drive for supplier submissions and sort of lots of other documents. And of course, then you've got the email and the Slack and the dashboards. And usually you're sort of switching between all of those things every single day. Then on top of that, in terms of volume, I've already mentioned you're kind of coordinating lots of suppliers at any one time. You have your internal team members. So for me, that was 15 other people in our team, and they're kind of all communicating in real time across Slack or Teams or whatever. You've got all of these different pieces of content in flight. And you might also be coordinating regionalized versions of the content, including visualizations, whether that means you have to translate things or whatever. So that's when you're working with regional managers that might be working in APAC or other regions. And then you've got all of that overflowing and all bleeding into each other. And so on top of that, in our sector, we have the scientific and product review. You've got the regulatory kind of legal sign off that you have to obtain for all of your assets that you create. You obviously, as a brand manager, as Lara put it, you are responsible for making sure that everything is compliant with the brand and everything is consistent. And you're looking to check that every asset that you create works across all of these different channels that you're working across. And in reality, it means that the illustrator, I'm sorry if I'm not using the right job description for what you do, is usually one of, over maybe 20 different relationships that's kind of being managed simultaneously, and something that needs to be kept track of. And just out of interest, as a quick show of hands, how many of you have ever had like a brief change several times before you've even started? I don't know if we could do show of hands, but Vita says yes. Oana says yes. So yes, I mean this is a known problem, and I can speak from personal experience now, as someone who works with clients directly as well. We often have very generic briefs, right? They're so general that you often have to go back to the client again with some questions. And, that can add a little bit of frustration, especially if you've been commissioned to deliver something on a relatively short deadline. So here I just want to share with you why I think visual assets are actually a really significant commercial element. So to me, I think of them as something that often carries the entire campaign. It often supports the sales conversations. It's doing the work of building the trust with scientists who hasn't yet decided whether they want to buy or not. It also carries the brand's image and its credibility for your client that you work with. And I've often wondered about this, but it lives on the internet, potentially forever, with the client's logo attached to it. So it's really important. Its visibility has that kind of long life effect often. And so the brief is what determines whether the visual asset that you create can do that job well, or if it can't do that job well. And just to kind of mention, I suppose this is an elephant in the room, but I think we all know this, but scientists are a very specific set of people that think in certain ways. They zero in on data and on diagrams. And I saw that there are some scientists in the room, so you will know. But as for a marketer, when I say that this goes for scientists scientists that are internally to the company and external. So external scientists, and by that I mean the audiences that we make the content for. Internal is often a marketer, like I was a few years back, would work with, product people, technical experts, lots and lots of people who have a scientific background and have really deep technical knowledge of the subject that you're building all of the content around. And you have to make sure that, what you're creating obviously is rigorous and it stands up to that scrutiny. And over the years, I found that the illustration, especially if it's really scientific, has data in it, is the very first thing a scientist trusts or doesn't trust. All right, they really look at it, and every element matters. And I've put the little square there because I remember once I was asked to do this workflow visualization. I spent absolutely ages thinking about how to create something. It was really technical, and the comment that I got from the technical person that was reviewing it was that the squares weren't proper squares. So much like the square I've put on there, so that the sides were not exactly, even. So that's the kind of the level of, and this was just a draft diagram, right? So I wasn't asking for that level of accuracy. I was asking to check whether everything flowed and made sense. Another story I can think of is when I worked for the Wellcome Genome Campus, someone in our social media team, posted something online, and they, with that, posted an image of a double helix, like a vector illustration. But the image was flipped. And so the double helix ended up not twisting the right way. And of course, lots of scientists noticed, within seconds, we had a long string of comments. And so we had to kind of take that down and revise it a little bit and put it back up again. So again, first thing they noticed was the visualization. And there is that statistics that gets thrown around that the way that human brains process visual information is, hundreds of thousands times faster than pretty much any other information. It requires more complex, word structure, sentence structure analysis, and so on. So that's why visuals are important. And if you get the visuals right, in my opinion, then the text doesn't really need to work as hard. But if you get it wrong, sometimes no amount of copy can actually save you. So this is why over the years I've been kind of honing my skills on briefing, and this is what I would typically put in a brief, or these are the things that I seek from a brief as well when I'm being briefed. And I'm not going to read out everything. A lot of it I'm sure you will recognize. So, the usual things like the brand and style guidelines, kind of the content. So primary audience and maybe pain points. You might also be briefed by your clients about sort of what channel deployment this is going to receive. So you get a sense of kind of how that affects the asset types and the formats and the dimensions that you need to think about. I often like to include the regulatory side of things as well. So most often the companies that we work with will have a list of phrases or claims that you can't use. So everything that's a must include or must exclude is always something that I share upfront. Obviously, who your contacts are and what your availability is like. So, you could actually get paid and what you're working to. But I also try to create visual element to my visual briefs. So usually it would be 3 to 5 images of a style that I either want copied or slightly adjusted, and I will literally, screenshot something and then sort of annotate it and put that in there. And a really important thing, because it touches the delivery and the smooth sort of interaction that you have and the potential of getting rehired by a client, is this idea of internal tools. And so when I'm onboarding somebody brand new, I make sure obviously they have access to all of the internal tools that they need, whether it's the digital asset management, as well as, maybe it's like a Trello board. So at LGC, we would use the Trello, and each designer, each supplier had their own board. And this is where kind of a lot of these attachments can live, and where you can, quite easily manage your project. However, we did work with some people who did not make use of the logins, so they did not participate board, which then complicates my job, where I have to go and find and fit in with their way of working, and I have to find, go to the email, or have to find a different way of downloading what they're supplying for me. And as I showed you before, that ecosystem within which marketers and big companies work is so complex that kind of puts another burden on you, and it does kind of put you off a little bit working with that person again. So just as a kind of something to consider if you're working with big complex companies. So really, this is just to say that for me, I think of scientific or medical illustration as a mechanism of trust, as well as a commercial asset. And I think you've probably seen the story of Thermo recently, right around sort of mid-May. So there was a research integrity or a scientific integrity researcher who found that there were the wrong antibodies, or that there was some evidence of the image having been flipped and artworked and so on in the Thermo app note. And then this person actually teamed up with another researcher, and they identified more than 150 other images from Thermo, and I think from Abcam, where they could see that the images used in the app notes were artworked, Photoshop manipulation, which kind of gave rise to this speculation that the data that Thermo were presenting in the app notes was their own data, and it wasn't published data that they were referring to. And so, as you can imagine, that the way, I think the perception of the brand and the way it presents itself took a little bit of a hit. And I think, Thermo had to do an official response to this. But that's really kind of the illustration of just how important it is for visuals, and how much of the brand's credibility they carry. And so, as I mentioned, illustrations is what scientists look at first. It earns their trust. And it just means that if they believe what's there, the content often gets reread, it gets shared, it gets saved. And it means you will continue to build that relationship with the scientist, and you hold their attention as a marketer. And visual consistency across channels is extremely important to maintain, because this is where usually the commercial value of this whole entire expensive campaign lives. And these kind of integrated campaigns are extremely expensive. If you think about, if I can just throw out some costs at you, I don't know if you know them, but to place an article with third-party media partner would cost you anything from $3,500 to $5,000 and up. To buy a mailing list would cost you, again, anything from $4,000 up. Advertising costs a lot, and these are all the channels that feed into an integrated campaign. Obviously, there's the production cost of the content itself, including the fees that are paid to creative professionals like yourself. So a single integrated campaign cost runs into thousands and thousands. And if it's part of an event, it's tens of thousands. So there's a lot at stake. And really, to summarize, kind of the three key points that I think are worth what I wanted to share with you is that visuals really are strategic assets, and they are investments from a marketer's point of view. They're not just simple deliverables, they're not simple outputs, and they carry very expensive campaigns that build trust and are extremely commercially valuable to the clients that you work with. And so getting clear on those in the brief really, really, really matters. And then the second point is about the brief, so that just to say that when you get this kind of general brief that I also get, it doesn't mean the marketer's being difficult. It just means that maybe they're dealing with, 50 other things that are on fire that day. And I think knowing the environment in which they operate hopefully can create like a more and I would recommend to always have your own sort of non-negotiable briefing questions that you ask up front, because a good brief is a contract in the sense that it protects both parties. It protects the assets that you're delivering, so that it should clearly define what success looks like before you even start working, but it also protects you and your kind of professional image to the client. If the brief is good, you deliver a good output, minimal changes, everybody goes away happy, you are rehired again. So in a good brief, every element is there for that reason, and it really, really matters, in my opinion. And by the way, I never myself skip the briefing phase. So, when I commission work, I always give the brief a lot of time and attention, because I know it saves me a lot of time and money, downstream. So really, I've got some questions for you, because I've told you the story from a marketer's perspective, but I'm here to learn from your community. Something that Lara said earlier really stuck with me, which is what I agree with, is I don't think there's enough understanding by marketers of your reality. So some of my questions are, what do you wish marketers understood about kind of your processes before they brief you? Or what's the worst brief you've ever received? Maybe we could have a laugh there. Or, what's the thing that when it's missing from a brief that you notice it straight away and it makes it difficult for you to move forward? Or, what does a good marketer-illustrator relationship look like from your side? Because as a marketer, I'd be really, keen to hear from you guys. And Lara, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vika. Your presentation was really wonderful, and I appreciate very much the clarity with all these slides. And so I think she raised quite important issues with conversating with us about the visuals and the role that they carry in campaigns, and they really literally support the conversations. In a good brief is determinant for the good outcome. I do perfectly agree with her on this. And we can also agree, obviously, that illustration and visuals are not decoration, they build trust, which I believe this reinforces our role as illustrators and image makers about the importance of our work. So it's really nice to see that this is acknowledged by your team, Vika. So regarding these questions, we have about 10 people in the room. And so the way that you could answer the questions from Vika could be by either writing in the chat. I'll be reading them through, or you can also ask to have to speak directly, so that we can also do one step more towards getting to know you eventually. So if you'd like to have your microphone open to answer these questions of Vika, just let me know and I'll unmute you, and we go from there. So Oana is the first one. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Before would you like me to leave the questions up on the screen?
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let's keep them over there. Vika, do you still have time to stay here for another 5 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so Oana was the first one writing. This was brilliant, Vika. Thank you. Have a question for you. What kind of issues, questions do you find that often come up from designers which you thought, oh, I wish you asked this in the beginning, at the beginning? So that's a question for you.
That's a good question. And actually, I don't come across often designers who ask questions, which can mean one of two things. Either I'm absolutely brilliant at briefing, maybe not, or that designers have, or illustrators have become so good at kind of deciphering these generic briefs that they are able to, fill in the gaps. But if I were to answer that question, I would say I do wish that I was asked more questions, because then it gives me a sense of what I haven't covered. What is the piece of information that this individual is missing in order to do their best work. And I definitely don't get asked enough.
Yeah, this is interesting. From my experience, we often have clients coming in and asking, providing the brief, which, to answer your questions, is very often a very incomplete brief. And what I think, from my own perspective, misses the point every time I receive a brief is the context. So marketers and any type of clients come over to us, and that's, again, my experience as a studio owner. They come over to us asking for a service. And so in asking for the service, they submit a brief, which is, we need A, B, C. That is what you're supposed to deliver. And if we don't ask those questions, obviously that becomes almost like a Coca-Cola dispenser. You put the coin in, you get your service, and then that's done. Relationship stops there, and everyone goes on their own after that. But I do think that if marketers or any clients understand that the context is what also helps shaping the projects and the type of collaboration that you establish with illustrators, animators, and so on, I think it is something that we can also use it to ask more questions, obviously, and also better understand projects. So that is, in my view, the answer that I would give to your first question. What marketers could understand from better briefing, I think. Anyone else want to give? Nobody is asking for.
Can I?
Yeah. Okay, so we got Karina, we got Evita. So I'm just going to turn off my mic and let Evita speak first, and then I'll read through Karina's input.
Okay. So I will continue a little bit on what Lara said. So context is indeed super important to know before we start working on any deliverable. However, so I will go a little bit beyond that. And I would say that, for instance, it happens that a client, like a marketing agency, for instance, in my case, comes and they would like you for multiple deliverables that are connected to the same strategy. However, sometimes they prefer to brief you for single deliverables, which that's again in the context, because I believe, let's say I have a view that you have to guide your audience from one step to another, and its deliverable has a specific value in the client journey. So for instance, if they brief me every time for a single deliverable, we are kind of missing a little bit the touch points. And then I see it without me necessarily being responsible for that. Then I have a look, say, oh wow, no, then we need to correct this on the website if the white paper is like that. So I think that it would be nice also to have a view of what is going to be produced and have an idea of how the pieces connect with each other and how the clients of the client are traveling through these docs.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Evita. Let's read what Karina has to say. Great chat. Thank you all. Immediately, I notice when a briefing lacks a clear core message and the communication goal for the piece. Yeah, so context again. Sometimes clients ask just for a deliverable on a topic and forget to give more context about what they want with it. Yeah, so probably the lack of information overall. Yeah, so let's, Clara has also an input. I'm very curious about the non-negotiable briefing questions you mentioned, Vika, which I think it's a brilliant idea to make your own life easier. I'm curious because every client is different and I might consider different things as important to have in a deliverable. So how much time can it take to actually get a homemade briefing that you can actually reuse for different clients?
Yes, definitely. And I think just pulling on that thread that Evita mentioned, I think if you feel that the context is really critical for you, I would put that, I would create a template for yourself, and I would just, remove things from it if they're not relevant to a particular job. But you also have, a page of, okay, these are the things I absolutely need to know to do my best work. I would make sure that you protect your own delivery like that. And often the marketer that you're working with will appreciate that, because as you guide them for the information that you want from them, they'd be very happy to supply that for you, because as I mentioned, they're just probably so busy and so, head underwater. They have taken 3 minutes to think about the fact that actually you might need more than just, a quick email, that you might actually want some real specifics. So yeah, make your own lives easier for sure.
Okay, Molly is saying completely agree with the Vita. I like being aware of the entire vision for a campaign and not just a small part in it. It makes the deliverables integrate much stronger when we are all aware of the context. Yeah, so it reinforces what we discussed, which is something we have consensus on.
May I just add to that point, actually, which is that when we think about you're wanting to get continued work from your clients and delivering strategic assets and working on multiple deliverables and making sure that what you're delivering is actually like an evergreen piece of content that is customizable or repurposable and it goes across many campaigns, this creates a very interesting thing for you to consider, which is how do you structure your packaging? Because if you're creating one asset that carries a really expensive big campaign, that makes it a very valuable piece of work. And so if you are professionally prepared, you have your brief, you have an ability to anticipate that it's going to be part of an integrated campaign that has got to work across 7 different channels, that opens an opportunity for you to reconsider your prices and put them up, essentially. So that's another sort of element to consider in this.
Okay, thank you, Vika. Patrick, great presentation. Thank you. I'm thinking that what's very useful in the beginning of the process is to get rid of briefing doubts, consolidating a simple storyboard, and it's better if it's being made with a scientific validation. Probably it works in the majority of cases. Yeah, so I think of all questions we have here, we try to answer pretty much, we have answered almost all of them. There is the last question: what does a good marketer illustrator relationship looks like from your side? This is a question that Vika is asking us, but I think that is also a question that we could ask back to Vika. So what makes a good marketer illustrator relationship from your client point of view, Vika?
Yes, sure. So for me, I am looking for somebody who talks to me and brings me, essentially challenges me, So if I've not given them enough information, I would definitely want to see them asking questions. Often it depends on what I'm looking for, but variation of having slightly different approaches, visual angles of the same thing is really useful, because it often helps to kind of consolidate my own thinking as well. Obviously, things like responsiveness, and not somebody that I have to chase many times, and just clean, sort of professional. When I think of some of the best people I've worked with, they have been really quick. The people that I've worked with for many years get to learn your brand, and they just. You don't have to re-brief them on the basics every time. And that makes it much easier to send more work their way, because you get a sense that you're not going to have to cover the same ground every single time that you work with them. That's it, really. I think from my side, it's really simple. So someone who definitely puts their hand up and says, hang on, you haven't given me enough information here. I want to know this, and this, and this. That immediately makes me respect that professional much more, because they're telling me, they're giving me active feedback. That's really, really useful.
Okay, thank you, Vika. Oana Evita was telling me that Oana was asking to speak, so I'm going to unmute you, Oana, so you can ask your question. See if I managed. Yeah.
So, Oana also posted a question on the chat.
Oh, let me see. Then,
yeah. Maybe we can pick it up from
Sorry,
there.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. I just wrote it down. But yeah, thank you for unmuting me, Lara. Yeah, I just wanted to say that from the collaborations with marketers, my biggest frustration is not from briefing, but actually from the follow-up. I very, very rarely get feedback about how the assets I created, about how they performed, which is very frustrating, and doesn't help on the long term to gain that experience and to build on it. And I just kind of have to guess on it depending on how, like if with some agencies I've worked for 5 years, I can see how they've changed the briefing, the formats, and what they're asking for. They've changed it over the years. So from that, I suspect what performed better, but I rarely get results or metrics. It's very frustrating.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yes. And what sort of visuals do you tend to? What kind of things do you tend to deliver?
I work on quite a variety, and mostly for patient awareness. It's also like for social media or patient educational materials, or for slide decks with animated videos for presentations. So it's quite a variety, which probably makes it even more difficult to put things together.
Yeah, that's what. So for presentations in particular, it's kind of really hard to get a sense of the success metrics right around that. You can just generally say, okay, the visual has been used in this commercial presentation or whatever, but it's quite difficult to measure the impact, or at least in the short term. So, the value of marketing is realized over really long cycles, and so that's probably another reason why you might deliver something. And of course, it's your baby. You've worked on this, and you're really proud of it, and you've set it in the world, and you want to see how it's done. But I think often as marketers, we see those measurements, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 12 months later. And sometimes I've been in situations where you've put together a lot of content, a lot of assets, and in the end, they don't get used. Rarely, but that can also happen. But I absolutely hear you on the feedback. So, Oana, do you tend to reach out to the marketers that you work with and ask them for feedback?
Yeah, I do.
And you sort of don't get anywhere.
It's sometimes it's quite vague. It's like, oh yeah, they did a lot better than the previous campaign, or we've got like a 30% more reach. But I just feel like, okay, good to know that. And I feel like, maybe I'm imagining being this side of the screen, but I feel like nobody really wants to share. I imagine there are a lot of NDAs in place. They can't share that information. Or, people are so busy, it's actually taking like an hour or half an hour to dig up and find that information to send it over.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to understand why. And yeah, I do understand it's so different. It depends on campaign, but, like how that information really is available.
Yeah.
I mean, what would make it more easy for you to provide this information to designers?
I think knowing what you're looking for, are you looking to build a case study from that information, and then like really specific stats that you're looking for, so it's kind of like, what in an ideal world, what are you seeking to achieve for yourself with that data? And I think then it's easier for the marketer to say, oh, okay, well, I will tell Awana this piece of information, that piece of information, because as I mentioned, you often have lots of tools. You have, this integrated campaign that doesn't drop all at the same time as well. It kind of gets phased. So some content pieces go out the door first, and then the rest follow over a period of months. So sometimes you're kind of not really sure which, what to cite, right? Because from a marketer's point of view, the impact they're measuring is the commercial impact made for the company. So just in, pure terms, the revenue that a campaign might have generated. But I can also see how they might not feel at ease sharing that information.
I get what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if I can add that, so I think some things are more measurable than others. So for example, if you've created an infographic, you know roughly that it would have been put through channels like social media, or it might be a gated download, right? And if you know that the marketer is likely to have used it in a particular channel in a particular way, you know that those channels provide metrics that are fairly easy to get, because if I posted an infographic on LinkedIn and it got 135 reactions and some comments, I can easily go and find that on LinkedIn and quickly screenshot that for you and send you that information. Similarly, if something's been gated, if it's a white paper that you've worked on, I can easily go into HubSpot or whatever other CRM and look at the downloads from that, right? And I can give you that information. But some other things are more difficult to measure, like you mentioned, presentations. That's really difficult, I think. And it's difficult to know, where do you draw the line between how hard is the asset working that you've created versus the rest of the content, and actually the person who's then sort of presenting it and having that relationship in that situation. Similarly, I think events are a lot more difficult. So you might have created the most beautiful banner stand and really the most awesome banner which looks snazzy, but it's very hard for the marketer increased footfall on the stand to that when they likely have other things happening. Although, of course, it contributes. When a stand looks fantastic and people find it hard to walk past without stopping, that's your achievement. But it's also how friendly the people are on the stand. There's so many other factors. So I think if the channel mix and the context, which is what Evita mentioned, and how your assets are likely to have been used, then it's probably a bit easier for you to be really pointed with the measurements that you're asking. So maybe that's kind of how to approach it. Or, if you know that a banner you designed is used in advertising, you can get very good, metrics from an advert. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Vita. Okay, so we got one from And thank you, Ohana, as well. Patrick was saying the worst brief I've ever received was a bunch of images and a short text that he said, if you need me, just give me a call from a developer. Yeah, okay. Evita is asking also another question. I'm not sure. We are at time, and a couple people already left. Vika, do you still have time to answer this? From Evita?
Yeah. Absolutely.
When you bring in freelancers, what do you wish they take ownership of? And where do you prefer to stay closely involved?
That's a very good one. I think taking ownership of everything that's to do with creative judgment and giving me a steer. So, if I've asked for something that's clearly, as a professional, you're saying, no, that's just the worst idea, I would want some pushback.
Okay.
So, I guess it's all part of that creative steer. So, when I'm working with a creative professional, I want to outsource everything to do with making it the best thing ever to you. What I wouldn't welcome is things like changes to the copy or anything that I've done unless we have agreed it ahead of time. And the reason I mention this is because it comes up all the time. And what happens is marketers send you, let's say, an infographic commission, but they give you way too much text. And when you look at that, you say, there is no way I can make that look good, because in order to squeeze all of the text on the, in that space, it's just going to look horrible. And so what sometimes designers end up doing is they end up starting to sort of like cut up the text. And what I would rather have is for you to come to me and say, look, I can't, we need to really cut down the text here because, design needs space to breathe and all the rest of it. So just kind of having that discussion ahead of time rather than kind of, going off piste a little bit and interpreting things that maybe should have been a discussion. So, does that answer the question?
Yes, no, absolutely. So you like proactivity, but also be very transparent in communication before anything changes, etc. And then, like you stepped on the spot that maybe people bring in so much text for copies or other context, and then somebody has to squeeze this thing, which looks terrible afterwards. And I would definitely go. Let's make it a bit shorter. Let's decide what information is important. Basically, that in order for the whole to be more better, it has to be like that. Unfortunately, sometimes we need to cut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, like, if I think of some of the other examples, anything to do with UX or web work, that is an area where I definitely appreciate someone taking the reins and saying, look, the top third of the page has got to only have these elements in it, nothing else. This is what looks best. This is what is going to really catch the eye. And kind of someone who can identify for me the hierarchy of information that I've given them, what's important, what's key first. Like, I really appreciate a partner to, push against my ideas and recommend me things based on the knowledge and their experience that they can bring to me. So, kind of like a two-way. So it's not just I'm just telling you what I want and I expect that exact output. Often I'm looking for you to refine my idea with me.
Okay.
Yes, no, makes sense. And really nice, actually. Sometimes because we work with multiple clients and every client is a little bit different, so we try to estimate and see where can I suggest. And sometimes I'm also thinking like, oh, I said that. Does it mean that I'm interfering too much with what they are doing? So there were many times that I'm thinking like that. But So, but let's say an advice. What I say also to myself is just be yourself. Let's say if you think that something is important at this point, it's just to be mentioned and just say that this is an idea. If they like, they accept it. If not, I'm gonna go with what they feel is right.
Yeah,
100%. 100%. Because I think if you don't have a chemistry with a client, in that sense, then long term, it's not going to be a relationship that's going to keep feeding you anyway, right? You might just have a one-off. But you're absolutely right. Different marketers brief very differently, and sort of it's. You can only be you in the end. And,
in the end, yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the greatest advice I think that we give here. Yeah.
Thank you, Evita, thank you so much. Okay, so we got a few people now that have left already. So I know that we need to close this meetup, which has been really, really, really nice. And I wish to thank you also, Vika, for the really beautiful presentation, also the questions that you're answering. I'll go back and share my last bit of presentation so that we can go ahead. And so these were the questions. We have already given a lot of good attention to these. I had planned a question that I asked already before during our last meetup, which was, what are your impressions of the current EU landscape and opportunities? Feel free, if you like, to place a small text in the chat if you're interested in answering this, so that we get a little bit of your impression about that, but it doesn't have to be. And obviously that holds true only for the EU-based people. There is something that I want to round up and wrap up this event with, which is we try to share some of the upcoming meetings that could be relevant for any of you, depending on the background. So Evita was mentioning a webinar that she's going to be a co-host, correct? You are a co-host of the webinar, which is happening on 20th of July. And
exactly.
It's a paid webinar and is about ideal client probing questions. Really wonderful. There is another event that is for medical illustrators, and that's happening in Glasgow, Scotland in October 26, the Institute of Medical Illustrators conference. And then I kept another one that we mentioned last time, which is also interesting, the European CME Forum, which Evita was mentioning the last time we met, 11th and 13th of November in Amsterdam. So these are the 3 events that are worth checking for any of you. Yeah, and I wish to say thanks to, first of all, to Vika and Evita for the wonderful presentation and help for this meetup. And I'm sure the next one will be equally interesting, and I hope to have you as well for the next one. We just have to continuously spread the word so that people understand why our profession is meaningful. We've done this today. We're already thinking about the next host and see what contribution can be given to this discussion. But if you have anyone in mind or any idea that you would like to submit, I'll be very happy to listen and to see what we can bring to you next time. So for anyone who wants to stay connected, please look up on LinkedIn for Evita, for me, Lara, and Vika, and let's stay connected and let's keep fostering these conversations also online. I believe that's very important. And thank you, everyone. Let me see. There are 2 more clients. Okay, more comments. Basically saying thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen here and stop recording. And I will stay for another couple minutes, maybe with Vika and Evita, to just really see if there is anything that we can add. And otherwise, I'll see you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, everyone.